Hi there. Hi, my name's Maggie from Resume Care Management Consultants, and we're just about to start the webinar, Everything Children's Social Care Providers Need to Know about the Single Social Care Inspection Framework. I'm just going to switch my computer over to full screen so that you can get a view of the slides that we're going to be running through today. So if you just give me a minute to go through these few technical aspects, then I will be right back with you, hopefully. Hopefully now you're seeing on the screen the first slide, and so we'll make a start on today's webinar. Now, I'm going to be using slides today so that you won't have to look at my ugly mug, but let's make a start. And my name's Maggie and I head up the care and compliance team at Resume Care Management Consultants. Now, in today's webinar, what we're going to be covering is the future of social care inspection as it relates to children's social care. I'm not going to go into too much background information on the topic today, except to say that in 2016, the government ran a consultation, The Future of Social Care Inspection, and it included their proposals on how inspection should be undertaken future forward. Now, I'll be talking about the outcomes of that consultation as it applies to the inspection process for children's residential social care and the introduction of the new inspection framework. So basically, now if you're in fear of suffering from framework overload, there's good news on a few fronts, and not least that for several services the new inspection framework's not changing much from the one that they've been using since 2015-16. So what's the new approach? Well, the best way that we think to describe it is this: a Three Musketeers approach. Basically, the inspection framework and the evaluation schedule have until now been varied across the services, and I suppose to some degree this has made it quite difficult for inspectors as they're going through the various residential environments. And so the Social Care Common Inspection Framework seeks to unify the government's approach by bringing them under one judgement umbrella. And so who's this going to apply to? Well, the Social Care Common Inspection Framework, SCCIF, will apply to the following settings, and it's going to apply to all of you. So it's going to be children's homes, fostering, boarding schools, residential special schools, voluntary adoption, residential family centres, holiday schemes and provisions in further education and colleges. So you can see there that they're basically bringing everything under one umbrella, and so it's going to apply to all of your settings. Now, basically what this is going to mean is that the following three principles are going to link all the children's social care inspections under the Common Inspection Framework. And Ofsted say that the reason for this is to focus on the things that matter most to children, to be consistent in their expectations of providers, and to prioritise their work where improvement is needed most. And so these, they say, are the reasons for bringing it all under one umbrella. And so essentially this means that the Social Care Common Inspection Framework, Ofsted, will apply the same judgement structure across the range of settings, and the experiences and progress of children and other service users are going to be the focus, and that they're going to use similar areas of evidence to report on at each inspection, and they have actually given quite a detailed breakdown of what that looks like. So whilst the same judgement structure will be applied across all the settings, there are differences in the framework from service to service. For example, there's got to be variations from what goes on in a children's home, for example, as to what goes on in a residential family assessment centre. So they are being realistic about that, and they've had to build in various different changes and components to each of your services. So they're not going to look exactly the same. But the evaluation criteria used to make judgments and the accompanied guidance are, wherever possible, going to be consistent across the settings. And what we think they're saying here is that You know, it's not possible, despite the best attempts at a Three Musketeers approach, to lump everything into one basket. It's just not going to work. There are distinct differences between the various environments and between, you know, what you're doing and the people that you provide services to. And so we're not going to be able to cover all of them in this webinar, but we'll look at some of the similarities. So let's move on to the judgment framework. Now, the judgment framework, and this is going to be familiar to your children's homes and to other services, it's not going to really change that much. It's going to focus on your overall experiences and progress of children and young people, how well children and young people are helped and protected, and the effectiveness of leaders and managers. Now, the overall experiences is one that's going to be impacted by the other two, how well children and young people are helped and protected, and the effectiveness of leaders and managers. The outcomes of those two will be the ones that inspectors are going to focus on first and foremost. And so those are the ones that are going to affect the overall experiences. You know, children's homes, like I say, residential family centres and residential special schools are going to find that you've already been working within this structure, and other services will definitely find that it's a less complicated structure to follow, but it does have a few hidden strings. So let's just take a quick look at the grading scale. Now, the grading scale, all inspections are going to follow that familiar 4-point scale. There's not going to be any change there, other than the requires improvement rating. Now, this has been reworded in line with Sir Martin Nary's recommendations from his report into residential care in England, where some people felt that it was a bit degrading to have requires improvement. So for that reason, they've changed it to requires improvement to be good. And so this is an outcome from his recommendations. So your grading scale is going to still be outstanding, good, requires improvement to be good, and inadequate. Now, Ofsted are going to be focusing on the good, so the evidence that they're going to be looking at for everything is good. So there you go. So the judgment framework and the grade descriptors, each judgment area has a description included in the framework of what good looks like. Now, these are quite extensive, and inspectors will use the descriptions of what good looks like as the benchmark against which to grade and judge performance. So that's where they're going to start. They're not going to go anywhere else on that one. And they still do, unfortunately, even though they have got quite good descriptions, they still to some degree have the ambiguous best fit. Because what they're saying is that it doesn't mean that if you don't pass all the areas of good that you're going to fail. So it's kind of still got that little bit of ambiguous that you need to work around. So let's take a look at some of the evidence requirements that they're going to be looking for at your inspections. So in the overall experiences and progress of children, you know, this is going to be a core inspection activity, and that will be largely based around your evidence of progress in health, education, social, psychological and emotional well-being. And so those are the areas that you need to be kind of focusing on. So let's take a look at what they've actually written in their area. Ofsted have outlined the areas of evidence required, and they've gone on to be fairly specific about what good looks like using grade descriptors. Now, there are 13 grade descriptors for good in this judgment area, and they've given substantial detail on what they're looking for when it comes to good, as each grade descriptor is at least a paragraph in length. And as you can see from the following, we're going to come on to an example in a little minute, that they've actually been really quite specific about what it is that they want. I hope that you're, I've noticed from the feedback that some people are not logged in. I hope that some people have, can you just let me know, somebody, that you've actually got, you can actually hear us and that you can hear what we're talking about and you can see your slides? Is there anybody there that could just say yay? No? No? Okay, well, I'll carry on because some people can. I've had some thumbs up. Yeah, getting both sound and vision, that's fantastic. Okay, that's really good. I'm pleased to hear that. Fantastic, yeah, good. That's great. Okay, so overall, evidence in your overall experiences is they're going to be looking at the quality and the progress. So it's the quality of care, the quality of your relationships, the progress that children are making in relation to their health and education, emotional well-being, how well you understand their views, and the quality of their experiences on a day-to-day basis. So it's very much about that. Now, they've outlined this and they've got 13 grade descriptors in this section, and they're each of them quite lengthy. I'll show you this on the following page. So if you look at the page on the right, where they've got their outlines for what good looks like, you can see that these paragraphs over here, I'll try and do this without moving the screen, but you can see that these paragraphs are fairly lengthy, but they're quite descriptive, and there's quite a lot of these. We've actually put together a whole inspection evidence checklist. You can have look at that on the offers tab if you have time later on. So they have actually put together your areas of required evidence, and then they've put together what good looks like. So you've got quite a good benchmark there of what they're looking for. So what I think you should do is, if you have the opportunity, is to actually just take a screenshot of this and put it in your drawer for when your inspectors come out, and then you can actually challenge them on what progress looks like, because it can be, depending on what kind of young people and what stages your young people are at in their journey, progress can be big and it can be small, and it can be difficult and it can be ambiguous. So this slide here is actually what Ofsted have come up with when they've been challenged about what progress actually looks like. And so what Ofsted are saying is here, what do we mean by progress? They're saying that they recognise that for some children, because of their previous life experiences, progress is not always straightforward. Progress in one area may result in deterioration in another as they work through the impact of their experiences. Even slight progress in a particular aspect of their lives may represent a significant improvement for some children, and for inspectors will take into account individual children's starting points and circumstances such as educational attainment and experiences. So it's worth, if you can, keep a screenshot of this slide so that you've always got it to kind of come back to when you're talking about talking through progress of your young people, if you're an inspector and maybe they're not as happy as you would like them to be about that. Now, the other thing about progress, as we've kind of gone up and down the country, doing workshops with people and helping people in their service, and we know it's lunchtime and you probably you probably are just about to have your lunch, or you've had your lunch. But with this slide, what we're kind of trying to say with this slide here is that progress sometimes isn't so much about what you're doing, it's about when we're working with services that have got a long way to go sometimes, and they're looking at measurable progress. Is one way to start thinking about getting a sense of progress is to think about supermarket bakery. Now, I know that sounds a little bit weird and a bit far out there, but you know, when you go into Tesco's and you go to Sainsbury's, and sometimes you haven't even got to those baskets at the front door, and your senses pick up that kind of luscious smell of the fresh baked goodies that you're going to get when you get inside. Now, you can't see them, but your senses know that they're there, and you can certainly smell them. And sometimes progress in a service is a little bit like that. Before you even a word is said, or before you've even opened a folder or your inspector's seen anything, there's a sense that progress is happening. And I think sometimes it can be just a little bit like that. So let's move on to number 2. We've had a look about what progress might look like. So how well children and young people are helped and protected is your next one. Now, this is a limiting judgment, and you probably know, and what they mean by that is that the outcome of this will affect your progress outcome. So how well young people are helped and protected. Now, inspectors are going to start here. They won't start at number 1, obviously, do things a roundabout way. They're going to start here. And this means that if inspectors judge this area to be inadequate, then the overall experiences and progress judgment will always be inadequate. Safeguarding children is always going to be top of the list, and inspectors are going to look at this first. So you really want to be getting your evidence in this area pretty clear and always keeping it up to date. So they've only got 4 areas of required evidence here, but the actual grade descriptors against good are quite extensive. So how well your risks are identified, understood and managed, and whether the care and support provided is helping young people to become increasingly safe. The responses to children who might go missing and who are at risk of harm, exploitation, neglect, abuse, the usual suspects. How well staff and carers manage situations and behaviour, and whether clear and consistent boundaries contribute to a feeling of well-being. So they're really wanting to see that your situation feels secure for young people who are there, and that your staff and your managers know exactly what's going on a day-to-day basis, and more importantly as well, whether your safeguarding arrangements to protect children will meet all the statutory and other government requirements and promote their welfare. Preventing radicalisation and extremism, and how the home ensures that the needs of children and young people who live far away are met. And with radicalisation and extremism is quite far up on the list, and so much as they've mentioned it in there. We also have risk assessments for that in our shop if that is something that you need to be updating. So we've kind of broken this down a little. If you want to take a little screenshot of this, is, you know, just into the basic areas, whether children and young people are becoming increasingly safe, and whether risks are identified and understood and managed seem to be quite big ones, because they want to know that that is something that you've actually really got a good handle on. There's no point in managers or staff not being able to explain those things to inspectors when they come. They really want to know that you know actually everything that's going to be going on, and they're going to track your cases through, so they're going to have a look at everything that's going on in that respect. Now, the third criteria across all services under the Social Care Common Inspection Framework will be the effectiveness of leaders and managers. Well, this one's going to be quite a big one in actual fact, because what they've done here is in their definitions of good, these have gone right up into the 20s, and so they've got 20 descriptions here of what good looks like under the effectiveness of leaders and management, leaders and managers. And so again, if inspectors judge this area to be inadequate, this is likely to lead to a judgment of inadequate, and certainly no more than requires improvement for the overall experiences and progress judgment. So you really want to be looking here again at have you got everything in place under your effectiveness of leaders and managers, as well as your protection, because this is the areas that they're going to be focusing on. So we'll have a wee look now at some of the evidence for that. So you can see it's kind of grown here. It's even bigger now than the safeguarding. So you've got the effectiveness of leaders and managers. The areas of required evidence are going to be whether leaders and managers show an ambitious vision, have high expectations for what all children can achieve, and ensure high standards of individualised care, and whether you've got a clear understanding of the progress children and young people are making in respect of the plan for them. And this is quite important, because depending on your environment, you might not be, as a manager, that involved in the day-to-day care of your children and young people, but you're going to have that understanding and that knowledge, because that's going to be tried and tested throughout your inspection. And certainly as you go through your indicators for good, you're going to find that there's a lot of them there, and there's a lot of expectations on you. And again, they want to know as well quite a lot, we've seen recently, is about the impact of children's views and participation. So getting as much information and getting as much evidence together about the fact that your young people are involved in your service, they're involved in growing it, they're involved in tailoring the services, and that you can give them as much choice and participation as possible. And that can be quite difficult to do sometimes, is to even get them to sit down and have a weekly meeting. So trying to get that evidence together is going to be important, definitely. So it's interesting to know that this is the lengthiest area of grade descriptors, and that comes in at 20 grade descriptors in the good category, and they're fairly detailed, expecting managers to have a good overall understanding of all children and their individual progress. And we'll include this in summary, which looks like this. So in a kind of nutshell, they're looking at understanding of the progress children and young people are making. They want to make sure that you know what that progress is and that you can demonstrate it. The strengths and weaknesses of your service: strong leadership, ambitious vision, high expectations, children's views, individualised care, supportive environment for staff. And it's really important here too as well, as quite a lot of managers have been kind of falling down on the fact that they don't themselves have strong support networks, so to speak. So, you know, as a manager and as a leader, it's important that your own, it's not supervision, but, you know, that you've got someone that you can go to and that you've got actually someone who's giving you the input that you need on a day-to-day basis as much as possible. Guidance and leadership is what they want to see throughout this whole section. So evidence of effective action when necessary, and what that's about is about challenging when you don't have the services that you need for your young people. Are you challenging this effectively with providers? So tolerance, equality and diversity. So we've had a look at the 3 judgment areas, and what many people kind of want to know is how does the inspection frequency change for them? Well, there isn't really a great deal of change there, and what Ofsted have said is they want to focus their priorities on services that need their support more than others, and this means that the inspection frequency for good and outstanding services is likely to decrease. But it's not really, and there's not really that much of a difference here, and so it's not really going to be any big yo, that's great, they're not going to be coming out to see us very often. They will be still. So it doesn't mean that they'll go more often than they already are to those services that requires improvement or inadequate, but it does mean that subject to risk assessment, good and outstanding children's homes may have annual inspections, and the risk assessment will take into account the most recent interim inspection, reports received from regulation visits. Now, this is quite an important one. We run a team of regulation visitors up and down the country, and basically we're noticing that there's a lot more focus on regulation visits being put into inspection reports. Inspectors are mentioning these more and more, and they're certainly mentioning if in regulation visitors are leaving out some of the wording that should be in the reports. But what you want to be doing is getting these your regulation visitors to really showcase the progress that your service is making, get them to actually focus on some of the good things that you're doing, and on a month-by-month basis to actually start building up a really good picture, so that when the inspectors pick up your regulation reports, they're getting a really good picture of where your service is, getting them to focus on the improvements and the changes that you're making, and to really keep those focused in your report so that they can see this on a month-by-month basis, because regulation reports are being read and are apparently also being read now by inspectors, supervisors. So that's, I suppose, a degree of them risk assessing to make sure that they don't have to come out and visit you more often. So they'll also take into consideration the notifications received, any information from complaints, whistleblowers, local authorities, and any changes to the home's service and management, and any other any information that they find to be relevant. So definitely use your regulation visits and your regulation reports as something to big up your service as much as you can, and to give a good impression of the progress that you're making. So what's going to be the expectation for your service? Well, we'll take a look at the children's homes, and there's not really an awful lot of change there. Children's homes that were judged inadequate or requires improvement to be good at their last full inspection will be inspected at least twice in each year-long inspection period. So not much change there. It's going to be the same format that you're going to be going through. There is some good news for outstanding and good services depending on how you look at it. You will receive one full inspection in a year-long period, subject to the risk assessment, which we've already spoke about, and that risk assessment will take place at the beginning of the inspection year. The reason I say this about being good news or bad news is that actually in the consultation itself, some young people commented that they thought standards might slip if inspections were less frequent, which is why the risk assessment element was actually being highlighted and put there in the first place. So basically, if you're a good or an outstanding service, you can be looking forward to not hearing a knock on the door for at least a year. Secure children's homes. All secure children's homes will be inspected at least twice in a year-long cycle, regardless of your inspection outcomes. Now, other services, I'm sorry that we don't have enough time to go through all of this, but if you refer to your online Ofsted Social Care Common Inspection Framework Manual for your service, you'll find the details of your inspection frequency under the section Inspection Frequency. So in summary for today's webinar, really, in summary, what you're talking about is understanding the government's approach to social care inspection really boils down to the three things. That they want to focus on the things that matter most to children's lives, they want to be consistent in their expectations of providers, and they want to prioritise their work where improvement is needed most. And so if you look at it another way, they want to be focusing on your impact, your innovation, your practice, the difference that you're making in children and young people's lives. And that is the main point of focus, is what is the difference that you're making in the young people's lives, the young people who you work for. And they want to have consistent expectations, but consistent expectations that still allow for unique differences. And that's the good thing here, is being able to showcase your unique differences. What is it that makes you different from other organisations, and what is it that makes you unique? And don't be frightened to showcase those things in the work that you're doing, and to prioritise their work where improvement is needed most. And we would say there that basically there's not that much of a difference. Now, this has only been a short webinar, and we want to thank you for joining us today. If you've got any questions, actually I'm here on my own, so I don't have any time to sit and take lots of questions, but please do feel free to drop us an email or to give us a ring. You can download the Ofsted inspection checklist from our shop or at our website www.resume.co.uk. We hope this has been a useful presentation, and again, thank you for joining us. If you would like a copy of the slides to use in your service, or it's a training tool, drop us a line and we will find a way to get those to you. So we just want to say thank you for joining us, and we hope you have a good day.